Good morning and welcome to another edition of the Daily Fix. I am your usual host and presenter, Advocate Tulo Hoyane. A week or two ago, I promised you that I would be looking into the death of the potential witnesses in the Meyiwa trial. And I'm told that there are about 8 or 9 potential witnesses who have vanished ever since this trial began, right back going to the first trial that was presided over by Judge Meyiwa. In my doing so, I've been in contact with 2 forensic investigators, criminal forensic investigators, that I'm not naming, but that I am informed the defense might well call as witnesses in this trial. Now, forensic investigation or criminal forensic investigation involves a scientific analysis of the evidence and also other red flags around the evidence, which, if they are discovered or found, become of interest to the criminal forensic investigator in his investigations. So the first red flag, these 2 criminal forensic investigators tell me, was the existence of 2 dockets. The mere fact that at the very beginning there were 2 narratives as to how Senzo Meyiwa had died was a red flag for them. Now, they also found out that the intruder theory was not credible. And they formed the opinion that, in fact, Senzo had been killed by somebody in the Khumalo house. So having made the conclusion that Senzo had been killed by one of the people in the Khumalo house, they then sort of spread the investigation further to say, who are the possible witnesses who can testify to this? Now, it immediately became apparent to them that there was no way, or that it was virtually impossible for any of the people in the house to testify to the truth, that in fact there were no intruders into that house, because apparently all the people in the house had been prevailed upon to peddle the narrative that there had been intruders into that house. So these 2 forensic investigators tell me that, they had somebody in that house, come forward to say exactly what happened to Senzo Meyiwa. Probably there would not have been, all these elaborate investigations into what had happened there, because would simply have an eyewitness. And why eyewitness evidence in law is very persuasive. So would have an eyewitness if one of the people in the house had been, willing to come up with the truth. But there being no eye evidence, the forensic investigators tell me now that what was left was the circumstantial evidence that was gathered, or that they gathered, to try and establish exactly what happened. And it would appear that General Brigadier Ndlovu, rather, was one of the first people to have arrived on that murder scene. And in fact, it was Brigadier Ndlovu who sort of, presided over the investigation and, directed or instructed Musia, the forensic investigator in the case, how to go about treating a crime scene. And the two investigators tell me that Brigadier Ndlovu made the conclusion, or came to the conclusion, that the intruder theory had no credibility at all. And you'll recall that at the time that he passed away, Brigadier Ndlovu had indicated that he had met or interviewed a witness who had told him exactly what had happened in that house. In other words, this was eyewitness evidence that Brigadier Ndlovu had. But you'll recall that no sooner had it become clear that Brigadier Ndlovu had this information, and therefore had told the court that he would come before the court in the first Maumela trial, Brigadier Ndlovu rather, perished or died. So they tell me that this was another red flag, to try and which triggered their interest. Because they tell me the killing of Ndlovu was directly aimed at bringing a sudden death to Docket 375. Recall also that at the very beginning of the investigation, there were serious differences among the police themselves. So the police got split into two groups, each group pursuing its own narrative. So Brigadier Ndlovu was pursuing another narrative, which we are not seeing in court today. And Brigadier Ndlovu was also in possession of evidence that there had been attempts to defeat the ends of justice by those behind Docket 636. In other words, Docket 636, the one that we are seeing unfold in the Pretoria High Court, is really an effort to defeat the ends of justice, because those behind 636, the investigators tell me, knew very well that there had been no intruders into that house, and that to shield the people in the house responsible for the killing of Senzo Meyiwa was an act of defeating the ends of justice. So now we had General Ndlovu die mysteriously, allegedly because he was poisoned at the police function, at a high-profile police function. Now, shortly thereafter, his wife was killed in a most brutal manner when she was shot several times. Now, let us get briefly back to General Ndlovu again. Ndlovu, this investigator tell me, had this explosive evidence that would have simply shattered the trial that we are seeing unfold in the Pretoria High Court. Because Ndlovu being called as a witness and produced this other person who had given him information about what had happened in the Khumalo house on that day, the trial in the Pretoria High Court that we are seeing would simply collapse. Those 5 men that we are seeing in the dock would simply go free, because it would be clear that 636 is a false narrative. So my starting point now is with Brigadier Ndlovu. The alleged poisoning, I'm looking into the alleged poisoning, and specifically also the death of his wife, which followed shortly after the death of Brigadier Ndlovu. Because my forensic investigators tell me there's a definite link between the two. Remember the time that Brigadier Ndlovu's wife was killed, she was making attempts to have a post-mortem of her husband's corpse. In other words, she was, she had intentions, or she was embarking on a process that would, shed some light on exactly what the cause of death was regarding her wife, her husband rather. So this is the starting point. General Ndlovu, being the most senior police officer who was behind the narrative of 375, and his wife. The investigators tell me that there is no doubt that if these two matters can be investigated, some people, or all the people behind docket 636, will be found to be implicated in this mysterious death. So they tell me there is an investigation there to be done, because the two deaths, are both suspicious and can directly be linked to the investigation into the Senzo Meyiwa trial. So we'll look into the evidence, the bits and pieces of evidence that we'll get our hands on regarding the deaths of others, but Brigadier Ndlovu and his wife are the starting point in any investigation to determine why so many people ended up dying in this matter. Having said that, let me thank you for watching this video. Also thank you for the views that I'm seeing, and please have a nice day.